Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. Again, we're with Pastor April Dailey of the Crooked Creek Cooperative Parish. We appreciate you taking the time, April, to come in and share one of the more creative configurations of Lutheran parishes here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Before the program today, you were describing for me briefly a succession of part-time folks that have been working along with you in the cooperative. Right. And that each of them kind of with their own formal description brings different dynamics to the situation.
Well, just to summarize, as I mentioned, when the cooperative was first formed, we thought about seeking someone half-time, ideally someone ordained, and then no such person proved to be available after about 6 months. And we were contacted by the Synod and said that there was an associate in ministry who was interested, but who also enjoyed leading worship and so forth, so that would have possibly fit, a lot of our needs. And so she came on board in September of 2003 and was involved in a wide variety of the areas of the ministry beyond just Christian education, which would have been her focus normally. And in the process of doing that, found that she really liked doing what would normally be considered the work of the ordained person, decided to return to seminary. We then, in turn, as a result of that, became the intern site for her. So she was then going elsewhere after she completed her internship, which meant we would be vacant in that position once again. At about the halfway point of the year, or a little before that, the parish decided we enjoyed being involved in this new phase and decided to remain a site for interns, at least for the foreseeable future. And did just that then for 3 years after that. So we just concluded that phase at the end of August of this year, so just very recently.
Okay.
And had begun the search again some months ago, much as we began, for someone part-time ordained, once again encountering the same sort of problem. And so the solution, at least for the present time, was that we've brought someone on board as an interim associate, part-time, someone who's retired but not really, so working about 20 hours a week with us, leading worship and doing some of the other ministry aspects, visiting and some other things. In the process, had also entered discussions with some neighboring congregations that are somewhat in flux as to the feasibility of perhaps sharing a person in some capacity, with the thought that eventually that could lead to a larger cooperative. And at this point, that's somewhat on hold, but it's also not to say that that may not be re-explored in the future. It's opened some doors, I think, to conversations, and like 6 congregations will be having a joint Reformation service on Reformation Sunday as kind of a way of continuing to work together in some capacity, maybe not that full of a one, but in some capacity, with the thought that perhaps there might come a time where a larger cooperative may emerge with multiple staff of some configuration, of which we don't know what that will look like either.
It seems in western Pennsylvania the frequency or the location of Lutheran congregations makes that a little more feasible than in some places where there's a lot greater distance between church buildings.
That's right. Our parish, the farthest point to the farthest point, is about 13 miles, so not an insurmountable distance by any means with the 3 congregations. So.
Speaking of those 3 and the succession of part-time folks that have worked with you, how adaptable was the congregation to a fairly frequent turnover in terms of personnel?
I have to admit I was pleasantly surprised, for 3 relatively small rural congregations that have all been in existence for a very long time and had known some measure of stability, and then to undergo all of these changes, they really, just went with it very well. Because each year, even through the intern program, there was someone coming and going, and folks would lament that that's the only thing we don't like about this. We get to know someone, really get to like them, and there they go leaving again. But they adapted very well, and they really enjoyed getting to know the various students and being involved. They maintained contact with them and so forth. And we had some folks travel to the ordination of one of the interns and so forth. So it's been rather pleasantly surprising at how well and of course different personalities, different styles, and so yeah, they've done well with it, surprisingly, or pleasantly surprisingly.
And from the student side, from the intern side, were there discernible pluses from working in a multiple parish situation as compared to one more stable or freestanding congregation?
I know the students all commented that one of the things that they appreciated was they felt then well prepared for parish ministry, because part of their responsibility was leading worship each Sunday. They would be in a separate location from where I was on Sunday. We'd work together during the course of the week, but they would be on their own on Sunday, so they had that responsibility every week of preparing a sermon and leading worship and being ready to make decisions on your feet when things come up, the organ's not working well, or, whatever the little things that happen on a routine basis, that they would be handling with help from lay people in the congregation, certainly, but otherwise in a more realistic way as they would deal with in a parish on their own afterwards. So they appreciated that aspect. So we often joke that it was sort of the best of both, because it wasn't a detached site where the intern works primarily on their own, and yet they had a fair amount of responsibility, but we were always just a short distance away, as it were, that they could check back in, and we'd be working together through the weeks.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a good mix and a good balance, as you say, especially with the public worship side of things. Were there opportunities to be involved in the decision-making, administrative, council level?
Yes. The interns would routinely meet with each of the congregation councils as well as the parish council. The parish council is made up of the members of each of the congregation councils, and that's where the primary ministry decisions are made. The sort of day-to-day operations are dealt with in the individual congregational councils, but then the ministry decisions are made at parish council, and they were involved in all of those. So they had, of course, more exposure than the average to councils as well because of that setup. So.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we have actually come to the end of our second segment, and it's time to take a brief break, and we're going to come back and visit a bit more with the Crooked Creek Cooperative.